Namaskar. Welcome to Prakash on Basics. I'm Prakash Zog. We were discussing electricity. The reason electricity is so important is because we human beings and all animals work on electricity. It's a fact that many of us are not really conscious and aware of. Related to it, today's topic though is a bit difficult. It's very important, and so as an intelligent human being, all of us must have some basics of this concept. It is to explain how we sense and respond after interpretation of information. And that could be to any external or internal stimulus. And in fact, that exactly is what life is. Because without such responses, life is meaningless. Actually, our body is subjected to a number of different types of energies. We see, that means light, heat, we feel it, sound, we hear, there is mechanical pressure around, force, etc. All our sense organs convert all this energy into electrical impulses. But that, of course, is in suitable proportion. Let us try and understand today how all this is interpreted by our brain itself and what happens to the response. Uh, I take a pin, just prick it on my hand. Immediately, my brain interprets the information. I don't even know that I have a brain, but I immediately realize that there is something pricking me at a particular point. So, there is knowledge associated with that energy input, and there is the response that has come back immediately. My realizing, and then my trying to pull away my hand from that particular point. If I look at an object, or if I see something, or if I smell something, all these are going to generate a number of responses. We hear, we smell, we touch, we experience different energies. There could be mechanical issues involved. How does the brain know all this? How does it respond? All that comes through electricity. And this process is extremely fast. It works at a speed of in the range of 30 to 60 meters per second. And in an extreme requirement, it could travel at a speed of 120 meters per second. Realize that our height is only about 2 meters at the most from all areas where the signals are transmitting. Also, one more thing, since the signal travels very fast, there is no replacement for it. You can't have chemicals that move right from my brain up to my fingertip and back again in such a short time. That's not going to, there is no material transfer involved. So only process by which all this can take place is because of electrical signals. What are they called? Technically, it is known as an electrical impulse. An impulse is when you have a rapid rise and fall in the voltage, and that takes place in an extremely small amount of time. This is typically what an impulse is. The voltage that changes is typically referred to, as far as cells are concerned, as action potential. Now, how much is it? It's not much. Um, it varies from minus 70 millivolt up to plus 30 or plus 40 millivolt. That's all. And that drops down immediately. And this impulse, like a ripple, starts traveling and moves along and transfers information from one point to another. For this, what we use is known as the nervous system. It has a number of small groups. The most important part, of course, obviously, is our brain, followed by our backbone, where we have the spinal cord. And then there are nerves that connect the spinal cord to a variety of muscles, not only on the surfaces here and below, but also to internal organs inside. The brain receives information, interprets, and responds to this information. The information could be from outside, like my looking at something or my hearing some sound somewhere, or it could be because of some internal change that is taking place within my body, or if I feel hungry, or if I look at something associated with food, the secretions that begin, the timely release of certain factors like insulin, which is a big issue in diabetes. We'll talk of that sometime. Uh, all these are controlled. Now, we don't even know this is happening. And this is because of the electrical impulses that are coming from the brain to a variety of places within our body. Can we see these impulses? Actually, when we look at an EEG or an ECG, electrocardiogram, or an electroencephalogram, the one associated with our brain waves or with our heart, um, what it represents really is a change in this voltage that we see. It's a voltage versus time graph that is plotted out, and we call these as a number of waves that we see. For brain, it would be referred to as brain waves, alpha, beta, delta, and so forth. We'll talk of that when we start discussing brain itself. Uh, this is a typical stimulus and response pattern that can be detected by an external machine. So, what does this nervous system consist of? It has its major part is known as the CNS, or the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord that is within our backbone. That's a major part of controlling mechanism. Then throughout our body, everywhere there is a spread of a number of nerve endings and cells, and this is known as the peripheral nervous system, which is present in all parts of the body. Periphery is basically the boundaries of the body. Out of this, then you again recategorize these nerves. You call them as the afferent nervous system or the sensory nervous system. It is the one that gets information from outside or from within the parts of the body and directs it towards the brain. And then there is the efferent or the motor nervous system, which sends responses after interpretation from the brain to the variety of parts of the body in a coordinated manner so that a suitable action can be taken up by our body. This vast network of nerve cells is in every nook and corner of our body. How many? The estimated number is around 86 billion nerves are there, or nerve cells are there, and they're spread everywhere throughout our body. Like the design that you see on my shirt. There's a central part and a lot of fibers and ends going around. And there are, in addition to these nerve cells, there are also what are known as the glial cells. That's an idea, and their number is also equally important, and a very large number of cells are present. Their basic job is to support the nerve cells, provide them with blood, energy, food supply, and everything else. So these are the one that they hold on. There's also one more area I'm going to come to. It provides a external coating. So these glial cells provide what is known as the myelin sheath that you can read behind. So the glial cells, minor role, and the major role is of the nerve cells themselves. Like everything, there has to be a special name for it, and this is typically known as a neuron or a nerve cell. That's the picture that you see behind. um, they are the oldest cells in our body. Right from our birth they are there, And one of the major issues about these is that they don't divide and they don't multiply. Once you have them, you have them. If something goes wrong and they go bad, bad luck. Nothing is going to be replaced. So these are irreplaceable cells, longest living cells in our body, and big ones too. How big? The biggest one starts from the base of our spine and reaches the tip of the toe, and that's approximately a meter or a little more than that. That's the biggest, the longest cell in our body. The axon, the cell that starts off, the neuron that starts off from there, goes all the way down till the tip. Right? Of course, naturally there would be two of them going to the two legs. These neurons are naturally they have to be classified. They are talked of in two forms. One, depending upon what shape they have, and second, what function they do. One aspect is to talk of a multipolar type of a neuron that has a number of ends, multiple ends which are connected to each other. These are typically the ones that receive information from various points, and there are some that interact with each other there itself in a closed loop, and these are the ones that are there in our brain. The second type is a unipolar type. There's only one major thread that goes right through, and that's unipolar. These are the most common type of cells. They start off with what is known as the body of the cell, something like this. As you can see, there are ends that come out. These are typically referred to as the dendrites. In the center, because it is a cell, it has to have its own nucleus. But it doesn't have all those special properties of multiplying itself. So that aspect is not there. And along like this, there is a long stem that goes down. This is the one that is known as the axon. So we have an axon, and at the end of the axon, there are again some ends that go and split further down. These are known as synapse, as you can read there. The axon is a central long thread like long stem, and around it there are groups like this: two, three, four, five, many of them. This is a coating. A coating, the other word for a coating is a sheath. So this is a myelin. That's a typical type of a material that is created in the body, which is created again by the glial cells that I talked of. And this myelin sheath, one, two, three, and they're next to each other. So there is a slight gap between them. One, two, three, four, five, six, multiple layers. What does it do? Its basic job is actually the whole process is going to work on the ions. The ions outside the axon consist of sodium and chlorine that I have mentioned somewhere there. And inside the axon, there are certain proteins that are negatively charged, and potassium K is the kalium is the symbol for it. K, the potassium ions are inside, and they are supposed to go in and out, and that happens with the help of certain gates that are present inside. If they go out and disappear, then it's going to be a problem. So the myelin sheath actually ensures that those exchanged ions, the charged particles, remain within the framework of the neuron that we are talking of. And at the end, there are small ends. These are known as synapse. And they have a structure something like this, a cavity-like structure. And these touch or are very close to the ends of the top dendrites. So the information enters from dendrites, is continued along the axon and reaches the synapse in the form of an electrical impulse that travels at a great speed that I talked of. Only thing that happens here is that at the synapse, in most cases, there are certain chemicals that help to transmit the information. The gap is extremely small, and these ions, calcium ions, uh, these are known as neurotransmitters. They transfer the information from one first synapse to the next synapse in the nerve cell. And in this manner, information keeps trickling down. One very important fact is that most of these cells conduct electricity only in one direction, unidirectional flow. There are, of course, certain special ones that can permit impulse to travel in both directions. These are the bipolar ones, typically the ones that are within our retina. And there are multipolar ones like the ones in our brain which communicate to different parts within the brain itself. That's a little complex process. I'm going to come to that maybe later sometime. So what you have is the sensory type of neurons that are afferent neurons. They receive the information like touch, pain, the light that goes in our eyes, the what we hear, the pressure that you put on your fingers, and so forth. All skin surfaces carry all that information through a number of interneurons, because you can't have one neuron going all the way up to the brain. So there are a number of neurons that continue all along, all of them. They form one particular chain that reaches the backbone, and from backbone there is a main link that goes up to the brain. There the information is processed and interpreted. What is to be done is clarified, and a suitable response is sent back along the motor nerve or the motor neurons or the efferent neurons, and they then go to the corresponding organ wherever it is required and pass on this information to bring about whatever change is required. Sometimes we don't even know that something like this is happening, because an impulse or an information signal of this sort would go to your spleen, or it could go to your stomach, and you would release gastric juice depending upon the concentration levels along, or it could go to your, or bile juice could be released, or insulin could be released. We don't even know all this information through nerves that are already there inside. It is also going to go to the heart. What happens there is something that we will talk of sometime later. So we have the motor neurons that pass on information. So we have seen the structure of how the nervous system is built up. The diagram is just to help you to understand or picturize how the whole thing looks about. As I said, the top hair-like structures that communicate to the previous synapse are the dendrites. Then you have the body. Then you have the axon. You have the myelin sheath on top, and you have ions inside. Outside, there is an electrolyte, which is a fluid that is there, and the ions get exchanged. How is more of a very serious part of more of a chemistry and a medical area. I'll talk of this if some of you all are interested. I don't mind putting up a lecture on that also, because that's fun. But it's more purely science, how ions exchange and etc. But I'll come to that sometime. And then finally at the end you have the synapse. I'm trying to recapitulate so that you can catch on to as to what is happening. And there are neurotransmitters which will pass on the information to the next. Um, just to tell you, uh, people who take drugs and others, it is these synapse and these areas that get affected, and that's why their responses are dulled and all that. We'll come to that a little later sometime, maybe sometime. So, how does all this happen? I've been talking of so many things. Let's take an example to understand. Um, all typically all of us in India are used to understanding how cricket takes place. We have Sachin Tendulkar and so many new batsmen that have come in. How do they respond? let's say we are talking of a cricketer. He's standing with his bat next to the stumps, and a bowler bowls at him. The depending upon the nature of the ball, the batsman either hits it for a four or a six or defends it, or ducks down because it's a bouncer. Let's see how this has happened. The batsman is looking, which means that all information in the form of picture that is formed on the retina is being sent to his brain continuously, and the brain is constantly analyzing this information. The information that is being analyzed gives certain basic signals which keep on trickling towards the various he starts knocking his bat and so forth. All those are going to its muscles. Constant interpretation is taking place. Then when the brain realizes that the ball can be hit, it has to first judge whether it's a spin, whether it is coming fast, whether it's going to bounce and so forth, and plan accordingly. All this information is being processed within your brain, and the response has to be modified accordingly. And a number of coordinated signals have to be sent to a number of organs. You must keep track of the ball, so your eyes must be coordinated, your head movement must be coordinated, your hands, your fingers, your grip has to be coordinated, your footwork has to be good, so the feet have to be coordinated, your back has to bend suitably, so that has to be coordinated. So realize how many different types of signals are simultaneously being sent to all these organs constantly. Then all this comes because of the afferent neurons or the motor neurons, where it reaches all those points. Now, if the ball is to be just blocked, a few impulses are good enough. But if the muscles have to be used very firmly to hit a 4 or a 6, then it is the frequency of these signals or nerve impulses that must be increased. Because you can't increase the voltage. If you increase the voltage, the nerve systems might get damaged. So the number of cycles that are sent to the muscles are very large. So the muscle then responds that much harder. And you hit a 6 or a 4. And at the last minute, if the person realizes that it is a bouncer, naturally, you know what has to be done. You have to bend down. You have to bend your head. You have to bend your neck. You have to bend your back. Respond accordingly. If the ball is too fast and the response time is not good enough, the ball hits the batsman himself. So think of the number of actions that the brain is constantly doing in the process. Unimaginable how much our brain controls things. I'm talking. My tongue, my lips, my eyes, my hands, my fingers, they're all controlled by all these nerves that are constantly getting information from a variety of response points within our brain. And I could be just sitting like this, staring at the chessboard, doing nothing. After 3 minutes, I pick up one pawn and move it ahead. And again, start sitting. But my brain is constantly acting because I am planning out all those possible moves. So it may not be motor nerves directly connecting, but it could be mental interpretation that is being done. And for that, there's a lot of activity going on. And all this activity needs energy. And please realize that out of the total amount of energy that is available to us in the human body, in the form I had discussed all this ATP, ADP, and glucose, and all that energy, 25% of it is used by our brain. And a major chunk of it is used by the number of neurons that are spread within our body, like all these prints. Everywhere within my body, there are nerve cells like this. a core in the middle, and dendrites and synapse connecting to each other. All this is going to take up a lot of energy, and they cannot be replaced. These are the oldest living cells within our body. They are the ones that are controlling everything, knowingly, consciously, or subconsciously. If I just look at a jalebi, my water begins to water. I'm not doing anything. But my brain is controlling so many things, and my nerves are making sure that I am getting prepared to eat the jalebi. If it's my lunchtime, secretion patterns are fixed up in the body and secretions will begin. If I have to go to sleep, my eyes have to close their eyelids, and they start drooping and they gradually fall off. All this is because of nerves. No nerves, there is nothing. We as human beings, we as thinkers, we as intelligent people will no longer exist. That is our nervous system, the most important system of our body, because it controls, regulates everything within our body. If you have liked whatever I have said, please tell your friends about it. Think how our brain is working every time. I'll come to the working of the brain and the chemical analysis also sometime. It's a little bit of serious science, but I think we should know about it. It's not very difficult. Uh, Tell your friends about it. Like and subscribe to this channel. Let me know your comments. Let me know if you're interested in finding out how the neurons actually work. Do give a comment and let me know about it. Till we meet again on a similar topic to discuss something more. Namaskar.